try her again. Try her again once more. Oh, gone.
The traditional law of the sea requires all mariners to come to the aid of others when trouble strikes. In Canada, by the mid-1960s, a loose network of volunteer rescue agents was in place in many coastal communities. In areas where the mix was predominantly recreational craft, volunteer searchmasters assisted in SAR duties. Both the volunteer rescue agents and the volunteer searchmasters were unpaid, and neither they nor anyone they recruited received reimbursement for out-of-pocket expenses. The Canadian Coast Guard determined that this core group of dedicated volunteers had the potential to become far more effective by modifying the existing arrangement. By the early 70s, a rapid growth in small craft created a dramatic increase in SAR incidents and a huge strain on Coast Guard resources. In 1975, a Coast Guard study recommended that a formal organization be set up to coordinate the activities of volunteers and provide a more effective maritime SAR response system. 3 years later, on August 9, 1978, the Canadian Marine Rescue Auxiliary was born. One of those to sign up his boat and join was a young Harry Strong from Old Perlican, Newfoundland.
In Newfoundland, we're always involved in that. It's, you know, in the communities, you help your neighbour. Something happens, it's my turn today, it's your turn tomorrow. And when I saw this advertisement in the paper at the time, it was just at the time, well, 20 years ago really, that the price of fuel was starting to go up. And to go on an extended search for any length of time, it's getting quite costly. So I filled out this coupon, and a gentleman by the name of Ed Stack came to see me, and then I was invited to go to a meeting in Gander, and I became a member of the CMRA at that time, and the rest is history, I guess, as they say.
Even then, his management and leadership skills were evident. At the first meeting he attended, he was elected Vice President of the Auxiliary for Newfoundland.
At that time, he had just joined the Coast Guard Auxiliary as a volunteer, and the auxiliary itself was in its infancy. Search and Rescue as a particular program branch in the Coast Guard was also just starting to grow. And he was a person who wanted to make a difference. He wanted to be involved in saving lives. He wanted to be involved in search and rescue. He brought the professional attributes that all fishermen have. And because of his very personality and bringing these kinds of knowledge to the table, it was one of those driving forces that helped the organization grow.
Harry's roots in Old Perlican go back at least 5 generations. Both his grandparents owned schooners and were involved in the fishing and freighter business. And his father earned his living as an inshore fisherman. Harry was just 6 years old the first time he went to sea.
In rural Newfoundland at the time, as you became old enough to go on a boat and do a small amount of work, you know, that was what you did. You helped your parents to survive, really, I suppose. It was fun at times, but sometimes when you want to go swimming and you had to go fishing, you didn't like that. I guess in 1970, 69, 70, that's when I started on my own, really, to go fishing. 1971, I had the first longliner. Before that, we had a trap skiff, which was basically small boat fishing.
He was a good skipper. He was accomplished on the water. You had great confidence in him, and he proved his ability to be a skipper, you know, in regards to handle a men and fishing. He was reliable, trustworthy, and always there to play a practical joke on you too, you know, but he was basically a good man.
In 1983, Harry's SAR background would be put to the test.
I guess I could say I'm a living testimony to the search and rescue in Newfoundland, really. I had a boating accident back, I think it was 83. I'm back a little long here, and I'm one of the 3 survivors out of the 5. It was an accident that happened about 2 o'clock in the morning. We think the guy that was on watch fell asleep. There was another boat nearby, we called her, and then he in turn contacted the Coast Guard. And by daylight that morning, we had a number of boats from here in the community, as well as Beatty Verde, which was nearby, responded. There was a boat there, the Llewellyn rigs, and he was right on the spot. I mean, there was rough weather, and even the small boats that went out in the next morning at daylight, you know. No questions asked, similar to what's going on in Nova Scotia today, right? They don't hesitate, they just go.
Harry moved quickly through the ranks and became president of the auxiliary in Newfoundland in 1984.
Harry has, well, frankly, an incredible wealth of experience. He has been a search and rescue responder in the auxiliary at sea for many years. He's also a volunteer firefighter. He's run a hardware store, represented fishermen in many forums. He's been the mayor of Old Perlican. So when you add up all that work and all that experience, you really form a very, very interesting individual that is a real joy to work with, frankly.
He was fair-minded. He was very knowledgeable of municipal politics. He was good at making decisions, mostly to benefit the town. He always had a joke to tell. Every council meeting, he had 2 or 3 stories to relate. He was a good person to work with.
Thank you, Jim.
Harry downplays his incredible involvement in community service, but the record speaks for itself. In 1990, he was awarded the Commissioner's Commendation for his dedication to the development and formation of the auxiliary. In 1992, he was made an honorary member of the Canadian Coast Guard Auxiliary National Council by the CCGA regional presidents in recognition of his outstanding contributions to the auxiliary. And in 1994, he was named Citizen of the Year by the community of Old Perlican for his tireless efforts on their behalf.
Sometimes in life you meet a person that you admire and you like. Can't always put your finger on what you like about this person, what you admire about this person. But Harry's one of those persons. He's touched a lot of people across the country in the volunteer community. He's touched a lot of people in search and rescue. And I know he's touched a lot of people in the community of Old Perlican. And everybody will tell you, you know, if you need an ear to listen, call Harry. If you need a hand to help, call Harry. If you need a voice to represent you, call Harry. He's just that kind of a person.
Harry Strong is amazing. He's the volunteer's volunteer. I mean, he has done a tremendous job, and it's under his leadership that the Coast Guard Auxiliary has become such an important part of Team SAR. He has spent numerous hours. He's made an enormous contribution of his own time. First of all, as a volunteer himself out in the boat in Newfoundland, and more lately as a volunteer in the office side and ashore and representing the organization. And as the CEO now of the Canadian Coast Guard Auxiliary, Harry Strong does an amazing job for all of us. He has really done a super job of developing and bringing the organization to the point it is now.
For many, that would have been a sufficient legacy, but not Harry. He has been elected by the auxiliary for an unprecedented 8th term as Chief Executive Officer, reflecting their deep respect and trust in his leadership.
Harry has been very instrumental in bringing our membership from down around 100 people up to now we're close to 400 boats in Newfoundland and roughly around close to 700 memberships. And of course Harry was very instrumental into getting out into the communities and promoting our search and rescue efforts.
There are 2 achievements during his present tenure as Chief Executive Officer of which Harry is especially proud. The signing of the Contribution Agreement and the name change from the Canadian Marine Rescue Auxiliary to the Canadian Coast Guard Auxiliary. To auxiliarists, this finally signifies a true partnership in Team Coast Guard.
Right on up through, it took us 18 years really to get that name in place. But you talk to one lawyer and he would say, well, you know, no, you can't do it. And another lawyer would say, well, who are they trying to fool? Because you really are the Coast Guard Auxiliary. We were controlled totally by Coast Guard. We were authorized to do things. And if we weren't authorized, you don't do it. You don't get paid your expenses. We were trained by Coast Guard. And Coast Guard were supplying the money to operate the program. In a lot of areas in Canada, I guess it's probably a prestige to be part of an organisation called the Canadian Coast Guard Auxiliary. I guess, you know, the things that go with it, if you're going to go up and do an inspection on a guy's boat, it's nice to have, you know, an organisation like the Coast Guard behind you. And everybody was very happy with that. I had quite a bit of involvement in that. I just happened to be in Ottawa when this was happening, when we made the presentation to Coast Guard to change the name change. Then we, at the same time, we were given permission to spend a lot more money. With the contribution agreement, our budget was really doubled at that time, and with a promise of more money to come within the year and the 5-year agreement. So, I guess these are the two biggest things, and I would say they're probably on a par.
Harry has also worked tirelessly and extensively to negotiate better insurance coverage for auxiliary members and their vessels, as well as on the development of the new Canadian Coast Guard Auxiliary Uniform Program.
He knows how to make people work together on that, there's no question. But normally we bring this up and come up with a solution to a problem where every region is happy with what we come up at the end. We had fight. We didn't agree on many of the questions, whatever it's finance, whatever it's uniform. We do have argument, and I wouldn't say fight, but we don't all agree all the time. But he kind of brings us around as a president, and we come up with solutions.
Harry has been instrumental in raising the profile of the Canadian Coast Guard Auxiliary and is well respected internationally for his expertise and insight into maritime SAR operations.
Well, let me just say at our conference, he's certainly been a great ambassador for Canada, as well as the Canadian Coast Guard and Coast Guard Auxiliary. He's been friendly, very personable, and he's been able, I think, to let people know what the Canadians are doing and to perhaps stimulate greater cooperation between the various countries.
Well, Harry is a very well-respected gentleman in the search and rescue world. He has his innovative approach, tremendous experience he's brought to search and rescue. It is something we all appreciate and share skill with him.
When he has time between auxiliary responsibilities, Harry operates a paint and hardware store and helps Carol, his wife, run the Captain's Inn in Old Perlican. Carol states that he's so dedicated, he's left her customers in mid-sentence to take phone calls concerning auxiliary business, only to return an hour or more later.
Sometimes my wife used to get mad at me because I was doing all these things all the time. So now that I've dropped some things, I think I'm doing more than ever I did. We're still happily married, I suppose. We're not divorced, so.
Harry continues to volunteer over 30 hours a week to Canadian Coast Guard Auxiliary operations.
When you like to do the thing that you're doing, probably that's it. And you, like I've enjoyed doing the auxiliary work. I've enjoyed the volunteer work here in the town. But the volunteer work for the auxiliary has been good for me. I've done mixed with some very, very influential people all around, really around the world, and I enjoy it. So I guess really, you put in when you enjoy what you're doing, you put in as much time as you can at it.
One recent tribute to Harry's efforts in helping the Canadian Coast Guard Auxiliary evolve over the years into a world-class SAR organization came in the wake of the Swiss Air tragedy at Peggy's Cove in Nova Scotia.
The Coast Guard Auxiliary formed a major part of that response, and in fact they were some of the first responders on scene. They are well and truly a full-fledged member of Team Search and Rescue, and it's only through the dedication and the contribution of people like Harry that this organization has been allowed to develop and evolve and grow into the fabulous response organization that it is.
Typical of Harry, he refused any credit and focused instead on the valiant efforts of those auxiliarists at the scene and why all of Canada should be proud.